What is up guys, it's Modern Warfare here and welcome back to another episode of Coding Tutorials. So first of all, if you haven't watched episode 0, and yes there's an episode 0, go ahead and watch it now. I'll link it on screen or in the description. The reason for this is that video shows you how to install everything, how to get Visual Studio set up, the Xbox Software Development Kit, all the plugins that you're going to need, the library files that you're going to need. All of that stuff is covered in episode 0 and you'll be missing some stuff if you haven't gone back and checked episode 0. So go ahead and install everything in episode 0 and then come on to this video. So in this video we're finally going to start coding. We're actually going to make a basic RTE tool, a really basic RTE tool to begin with. I'm not going to do anything overcomplicated in this video. And what we're doing is we're going to be modifying the rings. We're going to make a mod tool that's going to modify the rings in this Sonic game. Just as an example, I know everybody wants me to do COD probably, and we'll get on to doing Call of Duty games later on in the series. But for now, we're starting with the basics. We're just going to mod our rings in Sonic. I did this in a previous video showing you guys how to find the address, how to find the offset for the rings in Sonic. So go ahead and check that video out if you want to learn how to find offsets in games. So I'll link that video in the description, along with the offset that you'll need. I'll also link that in the description if you're not going to go back and check that video on how we actually found the offset, the address, the location in memory where this is stored, where this number is stored. So those two videos, episode 0 and the video on how to mod games without a dedicated RTE tool, we're going to take that mod and we're going to make an RTE tool out of that address that we found for that game. So let's go ahead and start. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new project, and we're going to select Visual C# application. It's a Windows Form application. Now this video will probably be split into two parts because coding tutorials, they always take a long time. I apologize, but that's just the way they are. The coding tutorials take time to make. So I'm going to call this Sonic mod tool for the project and click OK. Okay, now we'll start us off with this basic form template that we have here. So we're going to replace this with a .NET bar one just to make it look a bit nicer. So first thing I'm going to do, just a few things we should do to start off with. In the properties box, we've got text, and we're going to change that to Sonic mod tool. So instead of form 1, it's now titled Sonic mod tool. And a couple of other things we can do. If we scroll up, see where we have maximize box, I'm going to select false. That gets rid of the button to full screen the application because it's going to be a small tool. There's no need to full screen it, and if we do full screen it, it's going to kind of mess up the formatting. So I'm just going to get rid of that to stop people from full screening the application. And we can finally start. So well, we can't quite start yet. The first thing we need to do is import some of the C# files that I did in episode 0. Unfortunately, you have to do this with every new project that you create. So I'm going to add in our C# files. So these are our classes for XRPC and XDevKit++. Again, all of this stuff was covered in episode 0. So I'm going to just drag and drop these into my project right there. And then we need to add the references for .NET bar and for our XDevKit++. So to do that, we right click on references, add a reference. I'm going to add XDevKit, and then I'm going to go into extensions, dev components.NET bar. I'm going to add that one in as well, so that we've now added dev components.NET bar, and we've added XDevKit as references. So now we need to go ahead and apply those in the actual code. So if we right click on form1.cs and click view code, we can view the code. And we need to add those in here. So we're saying that we are using dev components.NET bar. We're also going to be using XDevKit++, not XDevKit, XDevKit++ gives us more options. And we're also going to be using XRPC lib. Now I'm using XRPC for this tool rather than JRPC. You can actually use a combination of both if you want, or just one or the other. For this basic tool, I'm just going to use XRPC. There's no need to add anything other than XRPC will do fine for this tool. And now that we've added that in, we can change our form to one of .NET Bar's forms. So I'm going to change this to an Office 2007 form, and then switch back. You can see our style has changed to kind of like a, I don't know, a Windows 2007 Office kind of theme, which doesn't look the best. So we're going to change this. So if we click on Toolbox, and we've got all of our .NET Bar options in here. Again, if you don't have this, check back. Episode 0 shows you how to get all this stuff installed so that you have all of the .NET Bar toolbox items in here. So we're going to go down and we're going to select a Style Manager, and we're going to drag and drop that onto our program. I'm going to select it here, and in the properties we get some more theme options, so we could change it to a bunch of different ones. We've got 2012 Dark. There's a couple of kind of Metro style themes that I know is quite popular with the modding scene at the moment. It's Metro. For me, I'm going to go for a Office 2010 Black. I know it doesn't look too appealing right now. We're going to change that. So back in the Style Manager, I'm going to select Color Tint. I'm going to select Black completely. And then if I select the form itself and scroll up to, where are we? Scroll up to Back Color. And I'm going to change this to a white. That looks a bit better now. So another thing I'm going to do is get rid of these corners, these kind of rounded edges. I want them to be sharp edges rather than rounded edges. So down here we've got bottom left corner size. I can change that to 0. Bottom right corner size I can set to 0. And then if I scroll down, we also have top left corner size 0. Top right corner size 0. Now if I go back, we've got sharp edges rather than rounded edges. So this is going to be my basic template kind of theme that I'm going to be using for this mod tool. It's going to be a very small mod tool. Okay, so now we need to actually create a button. So the first button we're going to create for our tool is going to connect to the console. That's the first thing we need to do, is establish a connection to the console. We could do this when the program starts up and make it automatically connect, but then it would crash if the console was turned off or somebody didn't have the right plugins installed on their console. Then it's going to crash as soon as it starts up. So it's better to put a button in here to do this. So we're going to go to Toolbox Items. Again, with the .NET Bar, we're going to use a .NET Bar button. And if you're not using .NET Bar, they're pretty much similar items in the Windows forms as well. You've got a normal button that you could drag on. We use .NET Bar buttons because they give you more styling options. So we're going to drag and drop our .NET Bar button on here. So this is our connect button. Again, doesn't look too great, so I'm going to adjust the style a little bit. First the text, change that to connect because it's our connect button. And scroll up and we have got orange with background. For the color table, I'm going to change that to 2007 with background. Makes it look a lot cleaner. And I'm also going to get rid of the rounded edges and make it sharp edges. To do that, on the button we look for shape in the properties box. Click the 3 dots, select the one with the sharp edges, and we've now got our default button. Now we can also add icons as well. So I'm going to add an image, local resource, import, and then I've just basically downloaded a couple of icons. These are just PNG files. They're mostly 16 pixels wide and 16 pixels up, 16 by 16. So you can download these from Icon Archive, or from, you could download something, a PNG image off Google Images and resize it down to 16 by 16 and use it as an icon. So I'm just going to use this for my connect icon. And there we've got our connect button. So if we go ahead and double click on this button. Now actually before we do that, a couple of things I should mention. If I run this, it's not going to look the same as this. You can see it's got the glass effect around it, Windows 7's kind of default styling around it with this transparent glass. I don't want that. I mean, I don't think it looks nearly as good as what it would look like if I didn't have glass enabled. So we can disable glass by selecting the form, scrolling up to enable glass, change that to false. Now when I run this, it should look just as it looks in the designer. Okay, and another thing we can do is disable glass on message boxes as well. If you want the message boxes to not have the glass effect, then you can simply type in inside the form1, we can type in message box. In fact, it's message box ex for .NET bar message boxes dot enable glass equals false, and that's just going to disable the glass for the message boxes as well. Okay, so now we can go ahead and actually start coding this. So if we double click our button, and first of all you might want to name the button something different from button X1. If I just say this is the connect button, so now in the code it will be called connect button. So if I double click it, we've got connect button underscore click. Anything in between these two brackets is going to happen obviously when the button is clicked. So first thing we need to do is declare a new instance of XRPC. So inside our public partial class, you're going to want to change, you're going to want to add XRPC or JRPC if you're using JRPC, but if you're following this tutorial, I recommend you use XRPC for our basic application to start off with, because some of the JRPC commands are slightly different. They're mostly the same, but there's some slight differences. So XRPC, give it a name. A lot of people call it Jtag equals new XRPC. And that's declaring our new instance of XRPC. And you can call this whatever you want. Some people also call it console or whatever. I personally just call it XRPC because that's what it is. It's XRPC, so I just call it XRPC. And then in the connect button, we need to establish a connection. So I'm just going to do xrpc.connect and then open and close brackets. And that's going to attempt to connect to the console with XRPC when I click that button. Now, this is not the best way of doing it. I'm going to basically show you a quick way of getting everything working and set up so that you have a working tool. And then we're going to go back and we're going to improve on this. We're going to make the connect button better. We're going to make our mod button better. We're going to improve upon the code. This is just quick. This is just for quickness to begin with, to show you how to get it quickly set up. So this is not the best way to do it because obviously it's not going to give the user any feedback on whether the connection was successful or not. And if the connection isn't successful, it's just going to crash the application. So not the best solution. We're going to go back and we're going to improve on that. So don't worry. First thing, now what we need to do though is create a button that's actually going to do the mod, apply the mod to the console. So I'm just going to copy and paste my connect button, just quicker than dragging a new button on there and putting all the styles back on. It's much quicker just to copy and paste. So click the new button. We're going to rename this to max rings. So that's what this is going to do in the game. It's going to set our rings in Sonic to 9999999, just as we did in the video where we found the address in the first place. So I'm going to change the icon as well, make it look a bit different. It's Sonic, so I've got some wedding ring icons that kind of look like rings from Sonic. So we'll use that. And that's our button. So we're going to double click on this. In fact, what I should have done first of all was rename this button in the code. Instead of button X1, just call it max or rings button. So we double click on this, and in here we need to put in the code to actually send the information to the console. So I'm going to open up Peek Poker and connect to my console through Peek Poker. Click Peek and Poke. And then what I'm going to do is put in our offset. This will be in Peek Poker, will be in the description, along with the offset if you're going to make this same Sonic tool that I'm making, just to kind of learn how to do it. Here's the offset that we found on Sonic in the video about modding games without RTE tools. We found this offset for Sonic for the rings. I'm going to copy that, I'm going to paste it in here and have a look in the Xbox's memory at that location. And we can see we've got these values here. So if I edit some of this, first of all, just reconnect my controller and make sure we're unpaused. So we're unpaused, and I'm going to change this so we can see the rings changing on here. Let's change this to FF, poke, and see what happens on the game. We can see the values changed. So I'm trying to get this to 9999, and I believe what we did in the previous video to get it to 9999 was we did 05FFFFFF was enough to put it to 99999, and there we go, 99999. So we know now what the address is in memory, our offset, and we know what values we need to set to make it go all the way up to 999999. So here we go. So we can do this in the code now. Copy our offset, go back into the code. Now there's there's probably multiple ways of writing this. If you're not using xdevkit++, then you end up having to create byte arrays a lot. So let's say we weren't using xdevkit++, how would we write this? Well, we need to create a byte array, so we create byte and then open and close square brackets. So byte, give it a name, I'm just going to call it values. So the byte values equals, and then in curly brackets we put the values. So it's the values in here that we're setting. We need to set 05FFFFFF. So we say 0x05, comma 0xFF, and then basically I'll just copy this for the other three, comma FFFFFF. So that is our values. They're being saved into a byte array called values. And then we need to write that to the console. So to do that, we do XRPC dot set memory, and then open close brackets. Then we need to paste in our offset, because that is our address, the location as to where that is in memory. So we paste in our offset, and then we do comma, and then the values that we need to set, which is just called values. So that's what we called our byte array. So that should now work. That should set everything to 9999. So let's go ahead and test this. We'll go ahead and set this all back to 0. And we'll poke that in memory, and that should hopefully reset that back to 0. There we go. And we'll run this tool now. And what I shall do, so I'm going to click connect to connect to the tool, and I have to allow it on my firewall. And that's it connected. And then I click max rings and give it a few seconds, and there we go. It's changed it to 9999999. And that's our mod tool. We've made it. It works. But hey, it's not the best solution. If you want to just stop there, then fine. But it's not gonna be the best. We're gonna improve on this. We're definitely gonna improve on this. First of all, we need to fix the connect button. So for this button, to fix the connect button, the problem with it is you click connect and it doesn't tell you if it's connected. You just have to assume it's connected, because if not, it would probably just crash the whole program. So how do we fix that? So we double click the connect button, and what we can do is we can say if. So we say connect, and then if the connection is successful, so if XRPC dot active connection equals true, then if it equals true, then it must have connected successfully. So we say message box ex dot show, and we'll say connection successful. So we'll say connection successful, and then we'll say connected. That's the title. So this is the message, and then this is the title of the message box, and then we'll say comma message box buttons dot OK. So we have an OK button on our message box, and then message box icon dot information, an information icon, and that will be our message box for successful connection. And what we can say is, what if the XRPC connection didn't connect to the console? Well, in that case, we can say else. So we'll say else, and then we'll just copy this message box, and we'll change it to XRPC connection failed. And I'll change the title to an error, and we'll change the message box icon to an error message as well. So if the connection is successful, then it will show successfully connected. If the XRPC connection is not successful, then it will say XRPC connection failed. Let's give this a try, run it, click connect. Connection successful. We know it successfully connected to the console. Okay, so that's it for part 1. Part 2 will be out real soon. In part 2, we're going to be improving again upon our connect button. We're going to be improving on our mod button. We're going to be adding error handling in as well. And I'll also show you guys how to finally build your application once you're finished so that you can release it to the public if you wish. And that's it. Basically, we're going to be doing that in part 2. So stay tuned for part 2, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
Yeah.